Luna, say hi to social media.
She's got
Say
the.
hi to Daddy's list. All Daddy's friends. Oh, now you got the hiccup, huh? Oh my goodness. That is 5 day old. Yeah, 4 or 5 day old fresh life right there, my friends. Bye, Laura. Bye, Luna. 4 or 5 days old. Can you imagine that at one point we were all just a couple days old? Everybody started like that. I mean, it's just insane. It's insane. Anyways, what's up, my friends? How goes the journey today? I wanted to crank some amazing stuff out for you guys because I think about you often, and I really hope that these come up to the captain's facility here to crank this one. Let me go grab a chair. This is going to be an important discussion. I really hope you find these things helpful as you develop as entrepreneurs and business owners and artists and successful individuals, both financially and internally. And the topic of today's video is something that, we hear it often, but it almost like it doesn't really sink in. Like you can hear it, but it doesn't really sink in. And there's actually a reason why it doesn't sink in. And I have been super into neurochemistry, neuropsychology, brain research, all these things lately because, I've really had this amazing, self-discovery journey over the last decade that started, in the Eastern religions with meditation and yoga and the greatest of sages and wisdom and then, has come all over the place and all over the board. And now I find myself really balancing out a lot of that with the richness of the latest neuro research and neuropsychology and all the ways that our brain actually works, which is so interconnected and linked to our mind. Our brain is so unbelievably interconnected and linked to our mind. They're very similar, one and the same almost. And so in that sense, it's really helpful to understand how your brain works if you want to really understand how your mind works. And what I want to talk with you guys about today is the reason why you do what you do, the purpose behind your work. Because that little being down there has amplified purpose for me, amplified the reason why. And I want to hopefully, more empower this function and component of your life today by helping you understand what might be occurring on the level of neuropsychology. Now, first of all, when we talk about what it means to really deepen something in us, what does it mean to deeply understand, to deeply get something? What it actually means is that you create a neural pathway for that particular experience or subject or whatever it is. That when you experience something, you're actually forming neural pathways. And those neural pathways are literally what create your reality. Based on the neural pathways that are formed inside your brain, that's how you see the world. That's what creates your reality. And neural pathways are formed through experience. Primarily, they're formed through experience. You experience something and it creates a neural pathway. That then becomes your reality, how you see the world. And so I think people hear all the time, you got to have a why, you've got to have a why, you got to have a why. If you want to succeed, if you want to be successful, if you want to create anything important in life, you got to have a why, you got to have a why, you got to have a why. It's almost like we hear it so much that we tune it out. But what's it really mean? What it really means is that you are operating fundamentally from your prefrontal cortex. Because what a why does to you, what a purpose does to you, is it requires a thinking capacity that only your prefrontal cortex can deliver. It essentially requires you to live and operate from the most evolved part of mammalian life as we know it, the human prefrontal cortex. It is the part of our brain that distinguishes us from every other animal that we know of in existence. There is no other animal that comes close to the size of the prefrontal cortex of a human being and the complexity of the prefrontal cortex of a human being. It is one of our most gifted parts of our brain and mind. Yet, like idiots, we throw it away. We discard it, and we default on this much more ancient circuitry of our brain. What is also a beautiful part of our brain, it's all beautiful, it's all interconnected, but primarily the limbic system was evolved significantly before the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the earliest part of our brain, and then you can kind of see the brain as it evolved working backwards from the prefrontal cortex to the limbic system to the brain stem. And you hear a lot of people talk about the reptilian brain. What is the reptilian brain? It's just the brain stem. It's actually the stem that all of these other components sit on top of. And each time you trace that evolution backwards, the functioning of these components gets more and more and more sort of instant, like instantaneous gratification. So what I mean by that is there's a particular component of our brain called the amygdala. And the entire purpose of the amygdala is to generate a feeling tone. They call it a hedonic tone. The purpose of the amygdala is to create a feeling around what you're experiencing. So if I experience something positive, I feel good instantly. The purpose of that is so that I approach that opportunity. That's something positive. That might be good for us. That might give us more life. Generate this feeling tone so I instantly approach it. If I feel like shit about something, what's that for? So I avoid it. So I escape. So I can get away from whatever this threat is. Okay? Now that happens instantaneously. That happens prior to that data being sent to your prefrontal cortex. The way your brain works is information comes in from your sensory organs and it is sent instantaneously to your amygdala. Now it is also sent to your prefrontal cortex, but later, because it takes a lot longer for you to process that information at your prefrontal cortex than it does for your amygdala to generate that feeling tone and tell you instantaneously, do I want to approach this or do I want to avoid this? Now, while this is a beautiful part of survival, because it has literally helped species adapt and instantaneously make decisions in the wild that enable their survival, we're not really in the same environment that we were 5 million years ago or even 50,000 years ago. That stick isn't exactly a threat to our survival the way it was when we needed to rely on these instantaneous mechanisms to make a decision to survive or run or approach or avoid. Yet that biology is still deep in us. That programming is still deep in us. And when we oftentimes feel something negative, we're instantaneously in our biological programming. And I'm going to make a deeper video about all of this more, but this time I just want to focus on the why. We're in our instantaneous biological programming the second we get that, oh, this is a negative experience. And think about that for a second. Because how often do we experience negative things? All the time, right? I mean, technically, when you decide that you want to be an entrepreneur, you are throwing yourself into a biological shit show. You are literally putting yourself inside a biological fire. You are facing yourself with uncertainty, with risk, with challenges, with pain, emotional pain, discomfort, all these things that your biology is hardwired to get you to avoid. Your biology is hardwired to tell you, screw this, approach this. Screw that, approach that. And the challenge of an entrepreneur, the beauty of why having a purpose, why it's so fundamentally important to have a why, a deeper meaning that drives you, is because that deeper meaning that drives you is what puts you and has you operate from your prefrontal cortex. Now, why is that so important? Because all the studies have shown that when we make decisions from our prefrontal cortex, the longer in the future that we can actually think about something. Now, if I make a decision today based on where I want to be 5 years from now, that is a significantly wiser decision than if I make a decision today based on where I want to be an hour from now. Significantly wiser. All the data, all the research, everything shows that the longer we make decisions about something, the more that we can see into the future, the more we can envision what the future is, the wiser that our decisions will be. We will make considerably, significantly wiser decisions than if we are operating from that instant amygdala, approach or avoid decision-making process. This is why it's fundamental as entrepreneurs that we learn to live from, in a lot of ways, our prefrontal cortex. Not always, because there's other things that we want to access, content of a different video. But we have to be rooted in this wise decision-making process that life gave uniquely us, human beings. That's what's unique about us. And if we get stuck in this instantaneous gratification, avoid or approach mentality, which so many of us are in, then we will never actually realize our true potential, and we will continue to make very poor decisions, and we won't really stay focused on a long-term goal, which is what the wisest people do. The wisest people envision something, they have a why, they have a reason, they're being driven to maybe a 5-year vision, a decade-long vision, a 20-year vision for their life. And that 20-year vision is what guides all their actions and all their decision making, and come to find out, those are the wisest actions and the wisest decisions that you could make, the longer of a vision that they're guided by. The longer that vision is that guides you, the wiser that all your actions are going to be, and that can only come from your prefrontal cortex. So, here's the takeaway for today. Hopefully now it makes a little bit more sense. Holy shit, I'm literally hijacking myself if I don't deeply develop a vision for my life, a long-term vision for my life, that my biology is going to screw me, and I'm going to keep meeting these points where I'm going to fight or flight without even realizing it, just because that's my biology. So here's the action step for today. Develop an epic vision. Take a few hours of your life today to seriously write out a 20-year vision for your life. That is the exercise. That is my call to action to you. That is my invitation. You want to make leaps and bounds, movement and growth in your life, then sit down and truly use the power of your prefrontal cortex. Process. I want your brain to fucking hurt because you have thought so deeply about what the next 20 years of your life looks like. Where do you want to be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15, 20 years from now, and map it all out. Write an exact vision of what 20 years of your life looks like. What's the impact that you want to see in the world 20 years from now? What for that your life created? What's your why? What is the reason you're doing this? 20 years from now, what do you want to see in the world? And that's what you're getting up to work for every single day, is that 20-year vision. What do you see? Go write it out. Go map it out, my friends. And I promise you, it'll make one of the biggest differences in the decisions you make and the power of your life. Commit to this. Go create your 20-year vision. 20-year vision. And I'd love if you actually share with me what your vision is below this video after you've got it done. Appreciate you guys. Talk later.